invite me. That's I love coming to this event because it's outdoors and it's fun, and people are wanting to learn a few things and enjoy the outdoors, and that's what Pack Paddle is all about. So thank y'all. We appreciate it, and I'm glad to be here. This is my bodyguard, Joe. He's in charge of keeping me safe against any threats, just so you know. So I have my notes on my phone, but I'm going to try to wing it. But I will check my notes from time to time, make sure I don't forget anything, because I want y'all to have the full thing. Fishing and hiking go hand in hand, like Oreos and milk, or peanut butter and jelly. I mean, fishing is a great activity to add to your hiking activity. Okay, it gives you a reason to go. Not that you need a reason to go other than the scenery, but it's fun to try to look around and figure out a place to go. Figure out, kind of look at maps. Do y'all look at Google Maps to figure out where to hike? Because I look at Google Maps all the time, and partially to fish and partially to hike. But in Colorado especially, I really like looking at Google Maps to see if I can figure out where could we hike and then go fishing. And so where we met up actually was on a trail called the Pine Creek Trail, and it's north of Buena Vista. It's between Buena Vista and Leadville. And that's one of Becky, my wife, was with me when we were on that hike, and maybe a couple other people, I'm not sure. But when we like to do that hike, and you hike all the way up to the Continental Divide Trail. So, and it's pretty far up there. That's a full day hike. I think it's isn't it 5 miles up and 5 miles back or something like that?
Yeah.
It's a full day hike, but when you get up there, the thing that attracted me the first time, and I'll tell you the story of going there the first time, we were looking at, a friend of mine told me about the Pine Creek Trail, and so I said, okay, well, I got on Google Maps and I'm looking at it, and I look at the where it intersects Continental Divide Trail, and the terrain was the type of area that you get to where you're up high and it's a flat valley and there's a little small creek that just meanders. Y'all know what I'm talking about? It looks like it's going through a marsh. There's a lot of tall grass and it's just a windy creek, and it's one of my favorite things to fish because it's usually far away from everybody else. My number one thing that I like to do when I'm fishing is try to find somewhere that's far away from everybody else, and it is usually you can find a lot of fish. Normally they're about that big, but it doesn't matter because you know what? I don't care if the fish is this big or the fish is this big. They will attack a lure and it's so fun. And these little fish are so pretty and so fun, and so that's how we ended up doing Pine Creek, and we've done it a bunch of times, and we love to do it. And but there's other options. You can hike to lakes, you can hike to rivers, and you can hike along rivers and stop and fish and keep hiking. There's so many things you can do with regard to fishing. So what we're going to try to cover today is basically how to do it, what's my setup, what do you bring with you, and what's the simplest way to get into this thing. So let me ask you all a question. How many people have taken a hike? How many people fish, first of all? Okay, great, most people fish. And how many people have taken a rod with you on a hike and done some fishing?
How about a paddle trip?
We're not counting paddling. This is the Louisiana Hiking Club.
Okay.
Hey!
Yeah, okay, paddle trips. There you go. Yeah, of course, that paddle trips may be the only thing that goes with fishing better than hiking. But what I did was I went ahead and packed up a day pack exactly how I would do if I was taking a hike in Colorado to go fly fishing. And let me check my notes, see if I don't miss anything. Oh gosh. Okay.
I wouldn't think it was so compact, but it's just like...
Oh, it's very compact. Okay. All right, so I think I'm ready. Okay, so there's two options with fishing. Conventional tackle, Okay, rod and reel. This is an ultralight rod. I'm gonna pass this around, don't hook yourself. There's a live hook on this. This rod breaks in half, so theoretically, you could easily put this on a pack and use it for fishing. You could go fish in this lake with this setup right here. And it is made to fish. What I use this rod for is when we go to the Buffalo River and we're fishing for perch and we're fishing for smallmouth bass. And so I don't use this when I fish in Colorado. I fly fish exclusively up there, but this is an option. I'm not going to talk about conventional fishing a lot because most people know a lot more about conventional fishing, and I'm not going to get into conventional fishing a whole lot. I'm going to talk mostly about fly. But if you don't want to get into learning how to cast with a fly rod and you just want to do the simplest possible thing, getting something that's light and you can see this joint right here. Getting something that's light, small, and has this joint so you can break the rod in half will make it totally applicable to fishing. So y'all can just pass that around.
Would you take the reel off?
You can take the reel off.
I mean, while you're hiking, or maybe?
I probably would take the reel off when I'm hiking up,
Okay.
yes. But you could theoretically leave the reel on, just break it in half and reel in the line and put it on your back. So any questions on, as we go along, if you have questions about conventional tackle fishing, just let me know and I'll jump into that.
What about the lure that's on there? That's a beetle spin?
That's a beetle spin. That's like, you know,
Most
I
common
hate
thing.
this. When I'm conventional fishing, I go with the lowest common denominator, and that lure will catch almost anything, it seems like. Yeah, it's light, isn't it?
Very light. Where do you buy something like that?
His shop.
Theoretically, yes, but we do. I did get that there, but we're not selling that rod anymore. We just didn't have any luck selling
Bass
it.
Pro or Academy or something like that.
Yeah, you can find lightweight rods around.
I just
And-
use a Zebco, you know. Like,
Yeah, and that can work again. If you can break the rod in half, it just helps tremendously.
It's light.
So what you're looking for ideally is if the rod cannot poke up too much, especially if you're going to be hiking anywhere where you might be going under branches, which seems like it happens more than you think. You know, when I'm hiking, I'll catch this on branches a lot, you know, even on an established trail. So having something that breaks down small is really nice to have. So with the pack, I'm going to run through it. And I tried to bring pretty much everything that I would bring on a trip. So we have our fly rod here, and I'm going to show you two different types of fly rods in a minute. A conventional, traditional fly rod, and a thing called a tenkara rod. Has anybody heard of a tenkara rod?
No.
Okay, so I'm going to show you two different types of fly rods here in a minute. Of course, you're going to always bring something to hydrate. I'm going to bring, this is my fishing tackle, which there's more of that in there than I would usually bring, but I wanted to bring a wide variety so I could show you everything. The one thing that's not exactly fishing equipment that's in here, but I do want to mention it before I forget. Fish eat bugs. Okay, so sometimes you'll get somewhere and one of these will come in extremely handy. You know, y'all all know what this is, right?
Yeah.
Do I need to demonstrate it?
Sure. Is it a head thing?
Yes. This right here will save your sanity. Okay. It'll also help you fish much longer. So up in the mountains, you'd be surprised how many times you're gonna run into a whole lot of bugs. And you can have long sleeves, long pants, you can have gloves on, but when those bugs are swarming your face, you're just like, you go insane. And you know, a head net is a really nice thing to have. And really, it's a nice thing to have whether you're fishing or not fishing. I'm a believer in it, especially in the mountains. Rain gear, always something you want to have on the trail. If I'm in the mountains, I'm going to have a vest on most days. Even a warm day, I'm going to have a vest, because in the mountains, if it starts raining, like the day we were there, I mean, it could be warm like this, you're sweating going up the trail. Next thing you know, clouds come in, rain starts, hail starts. You got to sit down, you got to take cover, you start getting cold really quick. So a little bit of insulation I love a vest because they're so small, they're so light, and you can keep them on longer without having to strip all your, clothing off. So I like a vest. Always bring a vest, and I always bring a rain jacket. If it's chillier, I'll actually bring a puffy jacket instead of a vest. I didn't talk about the clothing I would wear, but it'd be a quick dry shirt, quick dry pants, whatever hiking shoes you like, and you're pretty much ready to go.
Is that a hydro down vest?
No, it's not. This is a synthetic vest.
Okay.
You could do down. The reason for the synthetic is that if it gets wet, it'll still keep you warm, whereas the down will start to saturate after a little while. Okay. The other thing that I have here is footwear for wading. So we're going to talk about wading in a few minutes. I'm going to leave this to the side. And I have a pair of socks. And I will explain this to you as well. Okay, because I have a system. So first of all, let's get into the equipment and talk about it a little bit. Now, this could be a little tricky, but I'll try to do my best to show you everything. So the reason that I brought this, have y'all all used these little things?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Night
I'm gonna pass
eyes.
this around. It's made by Night Eyes. I can't remember what the thing is called. Anybody remember? It's like, the things they used to put on a bread bag that you
Yep.
twist. It's like that, but rubber. And the reason that I bring it is that, as some of you may know, a lot of times I don't like bringing any extra weight. So a lot of times what I'll do is I will put the rod in here. I won't bring the rod sock because it's just another thing to deal with. And I'll stick the rod in here, and then I will twist this around the rod to keep it together. So if the rod is held together and you're hiking with it, if you're bumping into stuff, it's less likely to break. Fly rods are pretty fragile. You are better off using the rod sock, but if you're lazy and lightweight like me, you can use this. These come in handy for so many things. It's unbelievable.
They're visible.
I'll pass that around too.
It's a portable gear tie
Yeah.
by Night Eyes.
It's Niteize.
Yeah. They're great.
It's visible too.
Okay, so most fly rods come as a 4-piece fly rod. Now let's talk about fly fishing in general and why I'm going to talk about fly fishing. The reason that I like to use a fly rod in the areas that I'm fishing, especially up in the mountains, is that in general, for most places, they just work better. You catch more fish, and they just work better because you're throwing the stuff that the fish really eats. And usually you're fishing small bodies of water, either small lakes, shallow lakes, some super clear water, little tiny creeks, and you throw any kind of lure in there, and just the lure plopping in there, fish are out. So if you can throw a fly and it flies through the air and it just lands super gently on top of the water, like what they're used to seeing, you have a much better chance of catching fish. Plus, fly fishing is just fun. So fly fishing is one of these things that you can get into, and you can go deep into it, like crazy deep, and you can have a lot of fun doing it. And unfortunately, you pretty much can't just pick up a fly rod and just start casting. One of the advantages of the traditional rod is virtually anybody can pick that up, and they can just pick it up and start casting. And so the barrier to entry is very low. The problem with a fly rod is you really need to study how to cast, and you need to practice casting. Okay, it's not hard. It's very easy, especially for freshwater or mountain trout. You're never really throwing the fly very far. You're not trying to throw the fly 100 feet, and it's very easy to use. So I'm gonna pull this out. I'm gonna pull out the reel, and we're gonna rig this up, hopefully. So the other thing about fly fishing that's, I think, interesting is it can take you all over the world, and you can fish all over the world. The last place that this rod and reel fish was in Chile, a couple, like 2 or 3 weeks ago.
What, you said in Chile?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
So
Way down there.
yeah, it's way down there. But it's, and by the way, if you haven't been, we went to Patagonia, and which is a region of Chile in the south. And if you haven't been to Patagonia, just start studying and figuring out how you can get down there, because it is amazing. Like, yes.
What weight fly rod is that?
This is a 5-weight.
5?
Yep. So I'm glad you mentioned that. I might have forgotten to mention that, but I would get to it eventually probably. So fly rods come in different weights, from 2 to 14. And the higher the number goes, the beefier and stiffer the rod is. And what they're trying to accomplish with different weight rods is the ability to throw different types of flies and handle different types of fish. So you wouldn't take a 5-weight fly rod and try to catch a redfish with it, because the rod is too limber, and you would have a difficult time getting the fish in. Also, the flies you throw for redfish are probably too heavy and wind resistant to throw with a 5-weight rod. So you want to get a fly rod that will fit the type of fishing that you want to do. And for average hiker, I would recommend a 5-weight. And you know, of course, like anything else, some people would say something different, but they're all wrong. So a 5-weight rod is sort of a great balance for, it's the most popular rod for fishing for trout in the mountains, I'll say that. If you're a specialist, you might go to a 4-weight or a 3-weight, like to throw little tiny flies, you might go to a much lighter rod. If you're throwing what they call streamers, which is mostly like they're rafting down rivers and fishing for bigger fish with streamers, you might throw a 7-weight or a 6-weight. But 5-weight is sort of that middle ground that most people gravitate toward if they're going to be fishing for mountain trout. And so that's kind of what I'm covering. Again, there can be some variation there, but that's what most people do. Okay, so this is a rigged up 5-weight fly rod now ready to go. So, and I was talking the whole time, so you can see it's very easy to set up, simple to use, and not hard at all. I'm going to put this aside. I'm going to show you another thing. So if that isn't light and simple enough for you, there's a type of fly rod called a tinkara. Are you familiar with this? No. Okay. Apparently you have fly fish, at least some.
I used to have a fly rod. I usually just do traditional fishing. I got a fishing boat and stuff. But
okay.
It was an 8-weight for around South Louisiana. You know?
Sure. So it's not a new thing, it's actually an ancient thing, a Japanese form of fly fishing called tinkara, Tenkara, if you want to study it. And it's the simplest possible type of fly fishing. And it eliminates the reel. There is no reel on a tinkara rod. And I'm going to apologize right now because what I need to fully rig this is up in Colorado. I don't have the line for it, but I'm going to show you the rod. So,
Oh my goodness.
so you pull this out.
Holy cow.
That's the way to go.
Oh
You pull this out and you attach your line to the end of this. So you'll see. Same.
Wow.
What is the effective weight of that?
I'm going to pass it around. It's super light. Like
No, I mean, the way that's a 5, what is that roughly?
this would be like a 5-weight. Yeah. So the idea with this is that you have a line and you have a leader, and all you do is lift and throw.
no, it's like a cane pole.
It's like a cane pole. I mean, did anybody when they were a kid have these fiberglass telescoping rods like this? Because we had them.
No.
But now you
We had
did.
canes.
I mean, we had these that we fished for like sockeye and stuff in the basin. but this thing is super simple, and it is the simplest form of fly fishing, and it's the lightest thing. So say you're going on a 3-week trip to do the John Muir Trail, and you're going to cover 250 miles, and you want to bring a fishing rod, but you do not want to bring any extra weight. This Tenkara rod is probably the simplest, best way to do it. So I'm going to pass this around. So think about this. You have this, and you have a little coil of line about this big, and you have a little box of flies. You're done.
Oh, wow.
That's everything. Okay? So I'm going to pass this around.
So that doesn't have a reel or anything?
No reel.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm not a master of the Tenkara. I have caught fish on this, and I'll tell you a story. The first time we went to Pine Creek, we brought this rod and this rod, and Becky was there, and she fly fishes. She's pretty good. She's a good caster. She can catch fish, but I rigged up the Tenkara and handed it to her, and I said, "Why don't you go fishing, and I'll rig this one up." And in Pine Creek, by the time I got this rod rigged up, she had already caught like 6 fish. I'm like, what the heck? So it's like, and a lot of times you're fishing over grass, and you just like, you lift the line in the air and you drop it down like this. Fly goes out, fish comes up, boom. Yes, sir. Yeah, you lift, you walk, you do the mobile reel, and you lean the rod back. You do have to tire the fish out, and usually you're catching small fish, so it's not that big a deal. You just lean it back past your head, and the line will come to you, and then you just pull them in. The line is not a lot longer than the rod. It's just a little longer, maybe 6 feet longer than the rod. The line and leader combination. Yeah, it's like that.
It's up a little longer.
Yeah.
8-foot rods?
9.
9-foot rods?
Now some of these Tenkaras can be 12 feet. They can be very long. So I'm going to pass this around. Y'all can check it out. Just don't pull the cap off. Like this one is super fragile. You got to be super careful with it. So just kind of.
So just feel the weight.
Yes, sir.
You just fish it for recreation, you throw them back, or do you keep them?
That's a great question. Do we keep them or do we throw them back?
You eat them.
It depends on the fish.
For a Louisiana fisherman, they're like, is that a question? No. Okay. So to be honest
If
with
they're
you,
legal.
a lot of people who fly fish, the ethic is to throw the fish back. That's personal preference. I do both. So I fly fish for everything from redfish to little trout, and I'll keep a redfish and bring them home and eat them. I won't bring a whole limit, but I'll bring enough for myself and Becky's parents. Or
You're just doing a day hike. You're not doing a backpacking trip.
day hike. No,
Just a day hike.
also a backpacking trip. So let me tell you all a story. This is entertaining. I feel like it is. Becky and I did the John Muir Trail a few years back, and so I wanted to bring a fly rod. So we brought so we got to the you have to get a permit, and then when you get your permit, you have to go check in at the ranger station, and it's a long hike. It's over 200 mile hike, and so we go to the ranger station with our permit to check in, and they give you the safety talk, and a lot of it has to do with bears. And so they start talking about bears, and they're like, and I mean, I do think it's BS, but the ranger says, let me tell you something about bears. A bear can smell an unopened can of tuna fish from 5 miles away. I don't think so. But anyway, it is like the John Muir Trail is a bear. It's a bear. You have to consider it. So anyway, I think we were on I don't know. I didn't fish for the first few days, and we got to this campsite early one day, and we were next to this really pretty creek. And I said, you know what? I'm going to rig up the rod and I'm going to go fish. And Becky's and we're like, of course, we're going to catch a few fish. We're eating dried food and stuff. We're going to catch a few fish. We're going to cook them and whatever. So I go out and I start fishing. And of course, the first thing you do when you're fishing, when you're fly fishing, you go like this and you're like, oh, stuck in the tree. So I have brought, for 3 weeks, I have brought a total of 6 flies. I don't know why. I only had 6 flies. So I lost that fly. So I put a new fly on, go like this, and I lost another fly. I'm like, okay, stay calm. Okay, so I put the 3rd fly on, I start fishing, and nothing's happening. All of a sudden, the sun starts going down. All of a sudden, it's like, bam, bam, bam. I mean, fish after fish. It was crazy. And so I would catch the fish, and I'd throw them up on the shore. And so, wait, the bear didn't come then. And actually, to save you the suspense, no bears ever came. And so I was like, we're only gonna eat 3 or 4 fish. So I only kept 3 or 4 fish, and after I was finished fishing, I brought the fish, and I was like, I gotta clean these fish. So lesson number 1, if you are gonna keep and clean fish, bring a proper knife. Okay? So I had a pocket knife. I was like, I'm just gonna clean these fish. Well, trout are extremely slippery. Let me tell you this. They are so slippery. And if you don't have a sharp knife, it is really hard to clean them. So I made a complete mess out of cleaning them. I had goo up to my elbows. And I brought the fish to Becky, and they're like, it's like a murder scene. You know, it's like a murder scene. And so she does her best. We cook the fish, and we're finished. We go and throw the rest away, and we start thinking, you know what? If a bear can smell an unopened can of tuna fish for 5 miles away, how far away will he smell my arms from? So anyway, if you do, that was a long story for one question. But anyway, I think keeping a few fish is really cool. I actually think day hiking, to me, the opportunity in day hiking to go up and bring a small stove or build a small fire and catch a fish or 2 and clean them and cook them is awesome.
But if you're backpacking like more than one night, you have most of your gear anyway.
Yeah.
Just take your fishing tackle.
Just bring your fishing tackle,
and
but
you got your raincoat anyway and your vest anyway for backpacking.
Absolutely. So just bring a fillet knife. Don't bring a dull pocket knife, and fillet that thing up and have a nice meal. Good, great.
John, how long is that Takara pull?
9 feet.
Okay.
Okay, so
John, I have a question. You travel out of state to fish and all that. Do you have fishing license wherever you go, or you get something that's international or that kind of thing?
That's a good question. The fishing license, she asked, well, what about a fishing license? You do have to get a fishing license wherever you go. So if you're fishing in Colorado, when you get up there, go get you a fishing license. So you'll have to get a different fishing license for every state. Wherever you are, you're going to have to get a fishing license.
You sound
Every
temporary.
state, or if you go to Canada, you got to get one.
Yeah,
No matter where you go, you need a license.
Yes.
you can get a 1 day,
And
like
it's-
3 day, 5 day.
Yeah, and you it's like kind of a bummer to get it, but the good side of any fishing license is it supports fisheries. So you have to look at it as supporting the people who help to keep these fish
good for 1
at
year?
the right. You can buy a 1 day, usually a 1 day, a 1 week, or a 1 year. They all have different options, so it just depends. Okay, any other questions right now?
Probably
Yes.
do that online too.
So when you get a park, do you buy a park permit, or do you have to buy both?
As far as I know, just the state, but to be honest with you, I'm not sure, so it's probably worth researching that and making sure. Yes.
I was curious, when you catch the fish, if you don't cook them or clean them right away, if you have to walk back, how do you carry them, or do you rope them off, or
I would probably clean them by the river.
you just do it by the river? Okay.
Yeah.
So you make sure you're close
Yeah.
to it, convenient. All right.
Yes, correct.
Just one.
And away from the campsite, that's the,
10
yes.
miles.
I went fishing in Jean Lafitte National Park, and the only thing they checked was my state license.
Okay, okay, good.
Question about the gear. I spent a summer in Yellowstone, and you had to have barbless.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a great question. Actually, it's one of my notes, so I'll cover that right now. She mentioned that Yellowstone required you to have barbless hooks. Okay, so I'm going to tell you that barbless hooks are a good a good idea for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's way easier on the fish. Okay, as far as keeping these fish alive, if you're like gripping them and they're like, and you're trying to get the hook out, you know, you're hoping that fish survives. But with a barbless hook, you can keep the fish in the water and you can unhook him pretty much. That's reason number one. Reason number two is if you do impale that hook into a person, including your back of your head, it's way easier to get it out with a barbless hook.
Are you talking about personal experience?
Take the fish.
Yes. I'm telling you, I've hooked myself many times, and it's never a pleasant thing. I'm not kidding. I really have. But, you know, and I've hooked other people too. So if you ever come fishing with me, I'm very focused. But sometimes not on things I should be focused on. Okay, let me run, and you can keep asking questions, but I'm going to run through the other equipment that you really, really have to have when you go fly fishing. Okay. Number one, since we're talking about barbless hooks and getting hooks out of fish, you really need this. Okay, because if everything goes to plan, you hook the fish right in the corner of the mouth, it's easy to take the hook out. But sometimes they are aggressive and they'll get hooked further down in the mouth, and it can be impossible to get the hook out without these. So, like, there's times where I go and I realize I don't have my hemostats, and I'm just like, I'm not fishing. I mean, you would kill a fish if you don't have these and you hook them wrong.
Before you go, with the traditional fishing lures like the beetle spins, you can render those barbless too.
Yes, and that's a great point. So any fly that you use, you can take these hemostats and you can pinch down the barb. You don't have to buy a barbless hook, but you can pinch down a barb. Or you can buy flies with a barbless hook. Okay, next. Oh, this is important for some of us. Okay, because when I'm going to pass my fly box around so y'all can see. Now, when we're red fishing, I don't need glasses to put a fly on. But when you go and fish for these little trout and the flies are this big and the hole is microscopic, you're never getting your line into that fly without these.
One important part of those glasses is the glass keepers. When you bend over,
oh yeah,
the glasses go right in the water.
100%. That's I don't have my sunglasses, but it's like sunglasses up here, this on, this down, sunglasses down. I mean, it just that's how to do it. Yeah, you got to have this. Okay, next thing. I'm going in levels of importance. This is maybe we should just pass these around. I know I don't need to pass glasses around, but y'all have probably seen pliers like this. But I'm gonna pass this around. This does two things. It nips off. It helps you cut line. And when you look at this, notice there's a little tiny kind of nail thing that's here. So sometimes your fly has glue in the eye and you can't get the line through it. This will clear the eye. And this,
you put it on your pocket.
Just put it on your pocket.
That's cool.
Okay, next. Oh, flies. Gotta bring flies. I'm gonna pass this around. I want you to notice, when you look at this, there's hoppers and terrestrials on one side, and there's smaller flies on the other. And then I want you to notice also there's a fishing license. You see how I tape it to the inside of the box?
Yeah.
That's a really good place to keep your fishing license. Okay. So you'll see there's like ants, there's hoppers, there's caddis, there's, you know, all kinds of imitations in there that you can look at. Okay, next. Okay, well, this is what's called floatant. So it's like Vaseline, sort of. A lot of these, I like to fish what they call dry flies, which sit on top of the water. And to keep a fly floating, you need to put a little bit of floatant on it, or else they sort of get wet and then they don't float anymore. Okay, last thing. And you don't necessarily have to bring this. I'm going to hold the rod because we don't want to break that.
Yeah.
Okay. This is
Leader material.
it's called tippet. So
yeah, right.
on the fly line on the fly rod you have a leader. Now let's say you break off 3 flies on trees and then you have to put on 2 new flies. You may have to lengthen your leader back to make it long again. Y'all understand? Okay, so as you break off leaders, you may have to add tippet, or if you're using a really small fly, you may have to use a really small tippet. So if you could see this, and I'll kind of walk, you see the knots?
Yeah.
See how there's knots? Can y'all see that? Yeah. So I've added tippet material. Well, that's a wind knot. But I've added tippet material to this leader, and that is this. I'm showing this sort of last because really, for a day hike, you don't really have to bring tippet. This is like kind of next level maybe. Okay, any questions so far?
I'm noticing that it's really thick, and then you have what you're calling the leader. So that looks like it's thicker than normal fishing line.
Okay, so that's a good question. So there's a fly line and there's a leader. The fly line, when you're fly fishing, you're throwing the line, not the lure. That's the biggest difference between a fly rod and a conventional tackle rod. So the line itself has to have some weight to it. Okay? These lines are heavier on the end than they are in the middle. So that I'm going to just back up and show you what this looks like. So when we're fishing, when you're fishing, you see how this makes sort of a loop? I'll show you a little bit more. So you see the loop? So that loop will carry your fly out. And you see how soft it lands? That's what it's all about. So if I'm fishing a mountain lake and I see a fish swimming in crystal clear water, I can pick my line up and I can lay the fly out right in front of it, and hopefully it comes up and eats it. And that's what it's about. I'm going to show you one more cast. This is your typical cast. Okay, and it's very, you know what, I'll tell you this. Women generally learn much faster than men how to fly cast. I'm not kidding you. And that's because, number one, men don't listen.
Your wife taught you that.
What did you say?
She taught me well, right?
Yeah.
What did you say? What did you say? I want to pay attention.
But you know, men are like, like a regular ride. You're just like this. But a fly, your fly presentation is much more
Aggressive.
Almost artistic.
It is. So here's your other cast.
Oh, the men are
You're
aggressive.
gonna learn 2 casts when you start fishing. Your regular cast, and this is when all is well because there's no trees behind you. Okay? Now, let's just say we're on a little creek and there's trees right here. If I can lift the rod,
Keep it floating.
and I can slip it forward like that. This is called a roll cast. So I can lift and flip. Okay, so there's no back cast.
You're stepping forward as you cast?
No, I might be, but I shouldn't be. So that's a roll cast, and this is your conventional cast. And this is not a casting clinic by any means. You can spend it's sort of like a golf swing. You can spend
A lifetime.
years working on your casting. And but I will say this, to be able to go and cast 20 or 30 feet and catch catch mountain trout is not that hard. It's very easy, and there's a lot of good videos on YouTube, and there's also good instruction. There's fly clubs. There's a very good fly fishing club in Baton Rouge and New Orleans and in Lafayette, and I believe all of them probably give lessons. So learning to fly fish, it's a little bit, you don't want to just buy a fly rod and go fishing. You want to buy a fly rod and spend a few weeks watching some videos, maybe reading some books, reading stuff on the internet, and going out practicing in the yard.
Can you watch a river run through it for practice?
You can watch it for inspiration.
Yeah.
And no matter how much we try, we will never look like Brad Pitt. All right, so
You know of a good place in Louisiana to go fly fishing or regular casting?
you can.
I mean, to hike to.
Oh, to hike to? I was going to bring up a one spot that I think is really cool, and I know most of you have been here, and that's Kisatchie Bayou Camp. How many people have been to Kisatchie Bayou Camp in Red Dirt? Y'all haven't been there? Y'all should have a Louisiana Hiking Club event there. That is a nice place.
Is that on the Backbone Trail?
No, it's not, but it's near the Backbone Trail.
Okay.
Like if we go to do the Backbone, we'll usually camp at Kisatchie Bayou Camp. And it's sort of like Whiskey Chitta, but y'all have like, what's the one that flows into Bogachitta? The little creek? McGee's. It's a little like McGee. It's a small sandy bottom creek, and you can wade fish. And so I would recommend that. And you're not necessarily hiking to it, but the Caroline Dorman Trail, for part of it, for about 3 miles, goes along
that trail.
Goes along Kisatchie Bayou. So Caroline Dorman. So you can hike the Caroline Dorman, and wherever you want, you can jump down and go fly fishing. And I would recommend that for sure.
Okay.
And I should think about that and give you some more suggestions. So while we're talking, since I brought up wading, I want to bring up something else. Because I have different techniques for doing wading. And again, back to the lightweight thing. So you can bring sandals. These are pretty light, right? But not really. They're not really that light. But this is a good thing if it's a rocky creek like in Colorado and you have to worry about your footing, you might want to bring sandals. These are bedrocks, and I love them because they have this little cord, and you know how when you're wading, the rocks can get between your feet? That happens less with these sandals than any that I've found. So I use these all summer, but I use them when I'm wade fishing in Colorado. I use these a lot. So bedrock sandals are great, or some other type of sandals. But a lot of times when I go fly fishing, if we go to Pine Creek and it's a 5-mile hike and I'm trying to go as light as possible, here is my technique, and Becky really laughs at me, but it works. So what I like to do is I'll get to the creek and I'll take my insoles out and I'll put my shoes back on and I'll wade fish all day like this, and then when I get back, I'll let my shoes drain for a little while. I'll put on some dry socks and dry insoles with wet shoes, and you would not believe how well it works. Okay?
Are those Smart Wool socks?
Yeah. Well, I don't know what they are actually. I haven't looked. Smart Wool, Darnta, any of them will work. Any kind of good wool sock will work. So if you have dry insoles and dry socks and you let most of the water drain out of your shoes, you will find your feet might feel a little bit moist, but they're not bad at all. And that way you don't have to haul any sandals with you. So that's my tip for that.
All right.
Okay, now questions while I'm thinking, while I'm checking my notes to see if I covered everything.
How much do those sandals weigh?
I'm gonna pass. Can you pass that around?
Is there a place you can
They said how much do they run? Like,
how much? Oh, I thought he said weigh. I think they run about $100, but I don't know how much they weigh.
Yeah, that's kind of heavy for backpacking.
Yeah, they are. And you know what else? You know what else is really good and light is, have you seen the water shoes from Astral? ASTRAL. They make a water shoe that's super light. They're lighter than those, and it covers your feet.
Now, is there a place you can go like a website that would say Pine Lake, these flies are good for that at this season, and you go down to New Mexico and these flies are good for that season?
Okay, that's a great question. So I'll talk about flies. Who's got the fly box? Is it still making its way around?
Yeah.
Okay. When the fly box comes back up, I'll talk about that.
Okay.
He's asking how do you decide what fly to use, and that's a great question. While we're waiting for that, man, y'all are great. Your questions have covered a lot of my notes. So a lot of the hiking and fly fishing in Colorado that we've done is centered around Salida, and there's many places to go, but my top 3 are Pine Creek that we've talked about a few times already, Water Dog Lakes. Has anybody hiked up to Water Dog?
No.
I'll tell you, whether you fish or not, it is spectacular, and it's an awesome experience whether you're fishing or not. It's up on the divide. It's a big climb, but maybe a 2-mile hike, so it's a pretty short hike, and I would recommend that.
What state is that?
Colorado.
Near Salida?
Yeah, near Salida. And also, there's a creek. This one's a little more technical, but there's a creek near Salida called Greens Creek. Now, when you go to Greens Creek, you're going to be fishing beaver ponds. Now, when I was showing you the roll cast, you're going to be roll casting a lot. And these are going to be fish that are like in these little beaver creeks, beaver ponds. It's really, really cool. It's really fun. But it's kind of technical because of your back casting. But Greens Creek is one. And then the other one that I was going to mention, if you want to write this down, out of Buena Vista, is Ptarmigan Lake. And it's spelled Ptarmigan, Ptarmigan Lake. So if you go, that's another great one.
Yeah, I didn't get to see the other rod either.
Yeah.
Okay. While I have it in my hand, let me just go through these.
Yeah.
Okay. So usually, if I don't know what to throw, I always like to fish with dry flies. It's just, to me, it's more fun because you get to see the fish take the lure. The fly that I like to use the most to start with, wonder if it blew off. Okay. Okay. It's called a caddis.
Okay.
So I really prefer. This is a caddis made out of elk hair, but there's also caddis made with foam. And my favorite fly is a foam caddis. And I'm telling you, I fish with a foam caddis about 80% of the time in Salida.
Wow.
And do y'all want me to pass this around, or I can just show you?
Yeah. You probably drop it.
Yeah.
So it's just a very simple, small foam caddis. Okay, if the caddis is if you're walking, wherever you're walking, if you notice that there's grasshoppers, which is common. There's a lot of grasshoppers. So if you're walking around and you see grasshoppers kind of flying out, then you're going to want to grab a hopper. So this is a hopper. Huh. And somebody asked if I tie my own, and yes, I do. I tied this one, in fact. This is tying flies is my new obsession over the last year and a half. I tie a lot of redfish flies. I tied a lot of almost all the flies I use in Chile. I tied myself. When you go to a mountain lake, a lot of times the best fly is going to be an ant. So you see how this looks like a black ant? So as opposed to caddis are a bug that they nymph in the water and then they come out of the water. An ant just is crawling around and the wind blows them in. So if the body of water doesn't have a lot of caddis, the caddis may not work, so you may want to try an ant. So usually, here's a foam caddis.
How do you spell it?
Caddis.
Like a caddis fly.
Exactly. So you see how it's got that black piece of foam?
Yeah.
So remember how I told you have to put that floatant on the fly? when you have a fly that's built with some foam in it, you have less trouble with it sinking. So having a foam caddis like this is a killer fly right here. Really is. So I'll usually go foam caddis, then I'll either go ant or hopper, depending on whether I'm seeing any hoppers around. If I'm seeing hoppers, I'm gonna fish hoppers, because hoppers, the fun thing about fishing hoppers is when you throw them out 30, 40 feet, you can still see them. These little flies, you throw them out, you're not exactly sure where they are. If the fish comes up, you may not realize it and set the hook, or fail to set the hook. The other thing that goes along with hoppers and ants is beetles. So if you're seeing beetles, like this is a so this is totally a piece of foam.
Wow.
It's totally a piece of foam, and you see how there's a little orange thing on top? The orange thing is for the fishermen. The fish not seeing that. This is so you can see. So like if you use a black ant, it's better to get, like that black ant I showed you is hard to fish with because you can't see where it is. There are ants that have either an orange piece or a white piece so that you can see where they are. Now, next level, if it's still not working, then I'm gonna go with a bigger hopper. Like let's say I'll use this hopper that I showed you, and then I'll get a sinking fly. This is, I don't know if this is even worth showing you. So I'll get a little tiny sinking fly like this, that's called a nymph. You'll take your hopper, you'll take a piece of tippet, you'll tie the tippet to the hook, and then you'll tie the other end of the tippet to the dropper or the nymph, and that's what they call a hopper dropper rig. So you have your hopper, and then you have your dropper. So sometimes they don't want to eat what's on top. They want to eat they're eating what's floating around in the water. So your hopper becomes like your cork. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But the fish might hit the hopper. So you have two flies in the water. The problem with the hopper dropper rig is that it's a lot to, you probably could see just from the little bit that I casted that getting tangled up can be an issue when you're fly fishing. And if you have a hopper dropper, oh my God, it can be a total train wreck. So I only go to the hopper dropper if I absolutely have to. And
How long do you go between switches? How many casts or how long?
Yeah, that's a good question. So how long do you go before switching lures? So usually I'm hoping to visually see the fish. If I see a fish come up and sink back down, I'm like, I probably won't change that on that one, but if I get a refusal more than a couple of times, I'm probably switching lures. Okay? If I can't see the fish, I might fish an hour with a fly before I fish. I mean, like in, whitewater type rivers, you can't really see the fish. But in lakes you can, and in smooth, like Pine Creek, you can. So that's that.
John, can I see the flies?
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you. Okay.
Some big ones.
Okay, so I kind of, I guess we've been all over the map. I really wanted it to be a hiking, fishing seminar. So have we, there's not a lot. I don't really need to tell y'all what to do to hike. So I feel like it's mostly been a fishing seminar. Is that what y'all were hoping for?
Yes.
Okay.
That's John.
Okay, so what other questions might y'all have about fly fishing? Yes, sir.
How do
We
you?
were discussing getting the weight down on backpacking
Yeah.
to 18-pound base weight,
Sure.
maybe 26 because the food's more.
Yeah.
But you're adding weight here. Do you do any trade-offs in backpacking? Cut something out, or do you just do extra weight?
You know what? Since after that John
Well,
Muir
that's
Trail thing, I never kept another fish when I was backpacking. I considered it a luxury, and I just used it as an add-on. So in other words, I guess the only thing you could trade out is a little bit of food. But I think it's honestly, I think it's kind of risky to consider that you might catch fish as part of your food.
You're bringing extra weight because you're bringing your tackle. And,
Yeah, well, some
but it's
people
not that
like to
heavy.
bring a little chair with them,
all
and that's
together, you're
not a
not adding a
necessity.
whole lot of weight.
Well, I'll tell you, if you go Tenkara, did you see that?
I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't.
So if you bring a Tenkara, you literally have
Holy
the Tenkara, an ounce of line and leader and a few flies. So you're really only adding very little weight. Yes, next question.
That could be roll cast pretty well too.
Anybody else have any questions about fishing, about hiking?
Basically.
Yes, sir.
If you do keep a fish or two, what do you recommend you bring to clean the fish?
If you can find it, I recommend finding a fillet knife that's folding. A folding fillet knife. That'd be ideal. So if you're doing it a lot, I would bring a knife like that. If not, if it's only every once in a while, just get your regular knife sharp and get to it.
Have you
'Cause
read?
You can clean them real simply. Like you can gut them
And head them.
and head them, and then like put them on a stick or put them on a grill or something. You don't have to fillet them. So you don't have to do a ton of cleaning.
One thing I'd say is I don't think you're supposed to put the entrails into the water.
Yeah, you're probably better off to bury it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because
Yeah,
I think there's certain diseases that can spread because of that.
Okay. Questions?
Totally rookie question, because now I'm so interested. How often do you recast?
Okay, that's a great question. How often do you recast? So, okay, let's just say it's the situation is it's a moving creek. Okay, so let's just say it's that sidewalk. And I'm gonna cast the fly in up here, and then I'm gonna follow the fly with my rod as it drifts down. When it gets to the point where I can't follow it, I'll pick it up and I'll put it back.
So you're always casting upriver.
You're always casting upriver.
In a
Now,
moving-
why are you casting upriver?
Because the fish are facing the thing that way.
The fish face upriver. So the way fish feed, and this is important to know, is that fish are lazy, just like people. They want to work as little as they can and eat as much as they can, just like people. And so they will like to find some slower water. So, like, say you see that pole that she's leaning against. That if the water's coming this way, there might be a little eddy behind it, right? So what I might want to do is come right here and cast the fly in the water and let it come past that eddy. And they'll be sitting in the eddy waiting for the river to bring food to them.
Oh.
Okay, so that's the basics of how a fish would feed in a river. If I'm at a lake, so say I hike up to a high lake, I'm looking for these little dimples. Have you seen, if you watch a lake, you'll see a little dimple, like boop, boop. Okay, the fish will, like their nose will come up and dimple the water. I'm looking for the dimples first, and I'm gonna try to throw near that. Or I'm looking like, almost like red fishing. Sometimes they'll just swim along the bank. The big ones especially, they'll just swim real slow along, kind of out on the bank. And you try to throw the fly kind of in front of them without spooking him. And they'll either come up and eat it or they'll pass it by. If they pass it by, there's no fish there, pick it up, put it somewhere else. If you're doing, so rivers and lakes fish differently. So you're not, the great thing about fly fishing, there's not a lot of like sitting there. It's not like hook and worm type fishing where you're waiting for the cork to go down. You're casting, oh that didn't work, let me try over here. Casting, that didn't work, let me try over here. Cast, oh that worked. You know, so you're hunting and prospecting. And that's what's fun, is you're always engaged. You're not just, dreaming. What's that? Absolutely, 100%. Some of the best fishing can be city park ponds and golf course ponds.
Yeah.
If you can get on a golf course when they're not open and if they'll let you, a lot of times there's really good fishing in those golf course ponds.
Yeah.
And so.
John, have you read The Feather Thief?
You know what? I haven't read the book, but I heard a podcast.
It is
with the
amazing.
author, and that is an awesome story.
I got to sit in on a discussion with him via Zoom, and there's only about 6 of us because it was a fundraiser for a school, and he went to a war with his war buddy's wife was in charge of the school, and so for a fundraiser, but only like 6 of us signed up, so it was just amazing.
Yeah.
It's an amazing
This
book.
is called, there's a thing called The Feather Thief, a book called The Feather Thief. So flies are made out of feathers.
Okay.
And at some point, somebody broke into
The British Museum.
the British Museum
Natural
and
history.
stole all these bird pelts, a lot of them from extinct birds.
Yeah, yeah.
And then they
True
went
story,
and
yes.
they started selling them for exorbitant amounts of money to people who tie these super fancy flies. They don't even fish with them. They just they make beautiful flies. I mean, the story is very.
It's
you should
true.
read
Yeah.
it.
Okay.
There's a. We need to wrap up.
Yeah.
Okay. One thing I want to suggest: if you want to learn to fly cast, you can look on YouTube. You'll find a million things. There's a book by a guy named John Cave, C-A-V-E, and it's focused on saltwater casting. But everything you learn for saltwater casting, you would learn in conventional, freshwater casting. And I learned more from that book than probably any other book. So if you like getting books, that's it. If anybody wants to mess around with the fly rod, I'll be happy to let you try casting. Just come over and I'll let you.